everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. Today we have the Philippine Genome Center of the University of Texas hosting this session. Before reminders, the platform, participate, the email feedback. This is the Event Center. If you're having troubles in joining, log out the session and rejoin through the link sent to you by WebEx or entering the meeting room number 864-649-944 and password is Manila123. You're muted throughout the meeting, but you can chat your thoughts to us through the chat tab. And for questions, please type them in the Q&A tab. Your session, kindly answer it so you can send the sources of the session to you. Today's speakers are Al Marcelo, and maybe introduce our moderator for today, Dr. Bas Aguda.
Okay, is it my turn? Hello? Oh, okay, hear me now. Okay, let's start then. So hello everyone, magandang umaga sa lahat ng mga Manila. This is Balthazar Aguda, speaking from Bethesda, Maryland in the US, where it's now about 9 p.m. So I'd like to thank Dr. Alvin Marcelo for agreeing to speak to us today. As everyone got some bias sketch of Dr. Marcelo, I think called him a lot. He's associate surgery at the UP Manila College of Medicine and the executive director of eHealth Informatics Network. I invited Dr. Marcelo. I was wondering about the status of any Philippine Health Informatics Network or any integrated health information system in the Philippines. These systems, I think, are key in the efficient monitoring and perhaps prediction and managing of the health of the Filipino people. You probably have heard of the news about Google searches being able to predict a flu epidemic in the US way before the CDC, Center for Disease Control, knew about this impending epidemic. So that's big data for you. And I know that the Philippine Genome Center will have to contend with this kind of big data well beyond bioinformatics of cells and gene expression and all this stuff. So I'm very thankful Dr. Marcelo has agreed to talk to us about the bigger scale of health informatics. Oh, Dr. Marcelo, it's your floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Baltz. Good morning, good evening to everyone, depending on where you are. Apologies for some of the background noise. I'll try to drown that with my presentation. I will share my slides. For those who are attending and adjusting to a new platform that we're using right now, using WebEx, the webinar platform provided for us at AHIN by the World Health Organization. This session, perhaps we can also get feedback from participants comparing the previous platform, GoToMeeting, and the WebEx platform. This platform is special. It can accommodate up to 500 concurrent connections. And using this since 2012, and I think counting this will be our 57th webinar using this platform. So the I proposed to Baltz PGC and they accepted is IT governance, a solution to the complex problem of building national scale information systems. And I reviewed the abstract ahead of time and outline that I will use to elaborate on the topic is as follows. I'll give a brief background on the work we've been doing with DOH, DOST, UP Manila, CHED, and PhilHealth on the Philippine eHealth Strategic Framework and Plan. In other countries, this would be called the National eHealth Strategy. And they quickly define what is IT governance and how it has contributed to the development of the PEHSFP. Explain one very important upcoming project which will be relevant even for people working on genomics, is called the Philippine Health Information Exchange. And then, very high level, show how genomics, clinical informatics, and public health informatics will play out in the context of the PHIE and PEHSFP. Some disclosures, so I'll just ask you to focus on the last line, that I don't have any financial interests in any of the technologies discussed. Is that these personal perspectives as a practitioner in the Philippines. This is how I think IT governance has helped the Philippines with its e-health strategic framework and plan. I presented facts as much as I can, but where there are interpretations that are based on my conjectures, like what I thought were rationales and motivations, but are not really documented, I'll make sure that I highlight those. And this should not be misconstrued as policies of the Department of Health. Start. In 2011, April, in Hoi An, Vietnam, WHO and USAID brought together countries in Asia on a workshop on health information systems interoperability. Apparently, at this point, a lot of countries were having trouble consolidating and organizing their data in a manner, and still submitting the data in various formats to WHO and other development partners. And while no solutions were reached in Hoi An, there was agreement and knowledge amongst the different countries that interoperability is not happening, even Ministries of Health, and so much more between public and private sector. Sort of like a what we call kindred spirits, so to speak, those participants in Hoi An, Vietnam, that we were all in the same boat. We were all having challenges with our existing data sources. A few months later in Manila, WHO and ADB hosted the Asia Pacific Health Information Systems Leadership Forum. And more or less the same people from Hoi An were back in Manila. And at this point, on the first day of this forum, the program more elicited the same problems that were already raised in Hoi An, Vietnam. And so a few group of people of these here in Manila agreed to form an informal network, which will later on become the Asia eHealth Information Network, with support from WHO, ADB, IDRC, NORAD, and other development partners. There was an agreement that there's no school or university for national e-health systems, and the best school would be people who are implementing these national e-health programs themselves and bringing them together in a regular, consistent manner to learn from each other.
One example of an interoperability problem? Just a quick example.
So, a very quick example of this is when we ask countries to submit communication data, like how many cholera outbreak cases have you seen, how many diarrhea, how many under 5 mortalities. So some countries mention names, but some countries would give you this data, but then they would have different definitions for those data.
Right.
So in a way, they become apples and oranges when they end up at the regional offices. So not really comparable, because one country would submit under 6 mortality, and one country would submit under 5 mortality, because they interpreted child mortality differently. So those were very simple data that generate, but they're not given standards. Like child mortality should mean 5, that they should be disaggregated into male and female. So WHO and other partners ended up with receiving a lot of data that were not really comparable to each other. So those are the interoperability problems, or less data formats at its very core.
Okay.
Socializations of AHIN that where understandably health is already a very complex sector. It's many stakeholders, often with competing agenda. So think of this as the triangle of the patient, the provider, and the payer. Normally, and you'll have the pharmaceutical sector, you'll have the medical sector, the blood banks, and all the other participants in the health sector. So it's a very, very complex sector. Like to add ICT to that, which in itself is already also a complex sector. It has many components that are interdependent on each other. So you imagine the complexity of mixing these two different sectors. Health plus ICT would be e-health, and you can even end up with even greater complexity. So the question for A was, how do we manage, or the combination of ICT and healthcare? Do we manage it in a way that it can scale at national level, that it can be useful all over a country, from let's say Batanes to Tawi-Tawi, and not just Manila, Cebu, or Davao? Presented itself gradually. In February 2012, WHO and ITU invited country representatives to Geneva. This was a groundbreaking event because WHO and ITU partnered together to message that to get e-health done right, national level and at scale, the health city sector need to work together. Not separately, they need to work together.
What do you
The UN Agency for Information Technology, so I means International Telecommunications Union. They're an agency for ICT and radio telecommunications. The same way WHO is the UN Agency for Health.
Okay.
They're UN agencies, they're sister agencies. They have specific sectors. They're more or less vertical. But in our case, they decided to work together, straight at the global level, that to be done, it needs to be a partnership of the health and ICT sector. So I thought that was a groundbreaking event, so to speak, because the message was very clear and very important at a level that the UN ITU are partnering, and for the regions and the countries would follow suit. In that February 2012, they launched the National E-Health Strategy Toolkit, a 3-volume that describes the steps by which a country can go through to the national e-health strategy. So participants from the Philippines to this event were Miss Jovi Aragona, and from DOH, and Roy Consulta from the Department of Science and Technology, DOST, because DOST is also our agency for information and communications technology. So months after the global launch was the regional launch of the National E-Health Strategy Toolkit that was held also during the first AHIN General Meeting in Bangkok, August 2012. So that more or less ramped up the regional of the WHO ITU Toolkit. So that July 2013, Joey and Roy were ready. They presented the draft Philippine e-health strategic framework and plan in the requisite governance structure that to support BEHSFP. This is the joint DOH-DOST Department Memorandum below. This to me is a very, very strategic event in the history of Philippine e-health. We actually relate this also to the other countries that are having difficulties with their national e-health strategies. The agreement between the DOST that started national e-health activities go forward.
Quick question, Lloyd.
Yes.
How do you define e-health?
E-health is health and ICT. So WHO in 2005, they basically defined e-health as the use of ICT in healthcare. They present, so basically the definition, use of ICT in healthcare, and then the different examples, like using ICT in clinical care, using ICT for research, using ICT for education.
Okay.
So basically a very loose definition, ICT together. So if you really stick to that definition, I was a resident in surgery and I was referring a case to my senior consultant over the phone, that would have been e-health already.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So when you fax the laboratory tests from one clinic to another, that would have e-health already. But only in 2005, after the World Health Assembly, when the WHO adopted and formally gave out that definition. But in practice, people have been doing it for the longest time.
Mhm.
So the e-health strategic framework and plan has patterned its organizational structure to the one prescribed by the toolkit. So on the left side of the screen, you can see the prescribed structure of the toolkit, and on the right side is the actual structure of the Philippine e-health strategic framework and plan. That would be the health sector leadership, and bottom, the steering committee. The steering committee is composed of the Secretary of Health as the chair, the Secretary of Science and Technology as co-chair, and the members are the President and CEO of PhilHealth, the Chancellor of UP Manila, the Commissioner of the Commission on Higher Education. Below them, with the Technical Working Group, with corresponding senior ICT officials from the from CIS that we mentioned. Down would be the National eHealth Program Management Office, which is actually missing from the toolkit innovation of the Philippine eHealth Strategic Framework and Plan. And aside, you would have stakeholder reference and expert advisory groups, and so that's what we have over here. Steering committee, upon the recommendation of the technical working group, has created a health data standards expert group, data security and privacy expert group, advisors group composed of private sector, NGOs, and telecommunications companies and software companies, a capacity building task force composed of CHED and UP Manila, and a medical record working group. Philippines, there are 6 electronic medical records right now operating at the rural health unit level or government health center. And is the risk management working group, the clinical and business process group of DH and PhilHealth, and the working group of the DOH. Basically, this is the IT group of DH and the IT group of PhilHealth working closely together to make their systems connect.
Question, Eloy.
Yes, yes.
All these groups, let's say they generate data. Is there just one place in the Philippines where all these data are deposited?
So I will have a slide on that later on where that ends up. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So in terms of the development framework, you have the development framework toolkit from WHO and ITU, and on the right side is our interpretation of that framework. So as you can see, there's a lot of similarities. We have governance, legislation, policy, and compliance. We have standards and interoperability, human resources, infrastructure. Should be the same, except that we have more details on our framework. In fact, the Department of Health had started their national e-health strategy as early as 2010, even seeding the toolkit. The toolkit actually came out. It was very easy for the Department of Health to plug in the prescribed framework. After the July 2013 issuance of the joint memorandum, the National eHealth Steering Committee, composed of the Secretaries of Health and Secretary of Science Technology, they met for the first time. And it was a meeting that they said, let's add UP Manila and Commission on Higher Education to the steering committee because there's a workforce component in the framework. There's a workforce component on the toolkit, and they thought that that was a big gap. DOH and DOST not have a strong handle on capacity building, and UP Manila and CHED would have handles. He agreed to add UP Manila and CHED. Then set the initial priorities for the e-health program, that there are many things to do in terms of computerizing healthcare, but they do that, they need to give focus to the technical working group. So they had, okay, the priorities are increase maternal deaths, which is MDG5, increase health coverage, with pangkalahatan, complete health facility enhancement investments, which was about that time about 9 billion pesos, and then use of information technology in all public health facilities, public hospitals, and rural health units. In the meeting, they basically approved the Health Strategic Framework and Plan as suggested by the Department of Health and the Department of Science and Technology. Bootstrapping a whole e-health strategic framework and plan and getting it at the highest level, firmed, and now it's time to implement it. Unfortunately, Haiyan struck us November, so the next meeting was already in January 29 of 2014. At that time, the second steering committee meeting, there was already available from the Department of Budget and Management around 154 million on National E-Health Program. And it was at this point, at this point, January 29, 2014, I was a WHO consultant, National E-Health Steering Committee, and advised them to the steering committee was might want to adopt an governance framework to guide them to the complexities of e-health. At the point also, the secretary was Secretary Enrique Ona, and he was basically asking me, I'm being a Secretary of Health, I'm being asked to sign me worth of invest on servers, on networking, on data centers. Things are very unfamiliar to a transplant surgeon and a Secretary of Health, and that was a fair observation. At the position, they were being asked to sign off on things that could not really understand, much less connect to the healthcare system. So this was basically our advice that unless you adopt an IT governance framework, it's going to be very difficult for you at the top who are concerned with delivering services and to the people, and that to the ICT investments that you're about to make. So later on, I'll go through IT governance to explain to you how governance will help non-tech people like the Secretary of Health understand why the investments on information technology are important, and how we can make that ICT investments result in better healthcare for the people. It happened in January 29. Yes, Bouts.
So how is the private sector, health insurance companies participating in this? Is it mostly government?
Structure mostly right now is government, but in realization of the importance of the private sector, an advisors group was formed here, which is made up of private sector. So they are convened a year. They've convened already. So we send to them what are the current state of the art, what's happening, and then they give comments. And give comments, they're invited to public hearings, which happens every quarter. They can access the technical working group by email anytime. So open lines with the private sector. And later on, you will see the architecture, the Philippine Health Information Exchange, which will how they will be able to connect to the larger ecosystem. Now, we basically come to the slide where we define IT governance. It's basically the discipline to help enterprise leaders understand why goals must align with those of the business, how there's value, how much is measured, how properly allocated, and its risks mitigated with person yourself. So leaders here in the Philippine eHealth Strategic Framework and Plan would be the Secretary of Health, the Secretary of Science and Technology, the Chancellor of UP Manila, the Commissioner of Education, the President of PhilHealth. I don't think they are technology people, but will help them ensure that OCT investments, which are already very expensive, will result into value for respective agencies. That's the clearest benefit of using an IT governance framework is that is constrained the adoption of the framework. Uh, is actually an IT governance framework. It is officially defined as a business framework for the governance and management of enterprise IT. It is really downloadable at iha.org/COVID. It is really a set of tools and techniques to enterprises with the development and maintenance of their information technology. We can use it for national level systems. Yes, you can use this at the level of the company. You can use this for small to medium enterprises, and you can use this at the level of an office if that's the scope of enterprise. So it's a very flexible up and down, left and right type of a set of tools and techniques. Quickly, COVID-5 starts with a goals cascade where it basically states that very important people in any enterprise are the stakeholders. So it's very important for the enterprise to understand who are their stakeholders and what are their drivers, what are needs, of what benefits are expected by the stakeholders, what risks do you want to optimize, what problems do you want to avoid for those stakeholders, and what optimization of resources are you supposed to do, what stakeholder needs. Then you can set your enterprise goals, which will then influence to your IT related goals, which will then influence your enabler goals. So alignment, that is very important. Later on, when you start measuring your IT performance, you want to measure them along the lines of achieving your enterprise goals, and they want to measure the performance of your enterprise goals, whether they're meeting the stakeholder benefits, risks, and resources. The key roles, activities, and relationships as prescribed by COVID-5. So in enterprise, you would have owners and stakeholders. So in the Philippine Health Strategic Framework and Plan, the owners would be the Filipino people, the Department of Health, the Department of Science and Technology, UP Manila, CHED, and PhilHealth. They gate to a governing body, and that be the Health Steering Committee, that sets directions and gives it to management. That will be the technical working group. The group then instructs and aligns their subordinates who perform, operationalize, and execute the program, supporting back to the management, back a monitoring system to the governing body who is accountable for the owners and stakeholders. So really a loop of activities and responsibilities. While the governance body might not be technologically savvy, by directions, they are actually constraining the IT operations in such a way that the operations become responsible for what they're supposed to deliver to management and the governing body. COVID-5, one important principle is the separation of governance and management of IT. So governance body, usually that will be the board, and in the Philippine eHealth Strategic Framework and Plan, that's the steering committee, and management. In our case, that's the eHealth Technical Working Group. The governance body evaluates the needs of the Filipino people and then directions to the technical working group. Technical working group, in turn, plans, builds, runs, and monitors the health system, and running it and monitoring it, they actually feed back data back to the governance body so then get a response of whether the directions that they gave are actually resulting to benefit Filipino people. And later on, I will describe to you one such project called the Philippine Health Information Exchange, which is the technical working group is working on right now. They're doing and hoping to run soon to be able to use to collect data to be fed back to the government body. So to show this slide, this is the COVID-5 implementation life cycle. This will this own session by itself, just to show you that there's really a cycle of the follow in COVID-5 when we implement very complex systems from phase 1 to phase 7, then going back to phase 1. Philippines right now we have 3 who are 5 certified in COVID-5 implementation, 4 in Thailand, 2 in Indonesia. This is like a process in itself. We are starting to build capacity in different countries on COVID-5 implementation. Really result in better systems for participating countries. And so basically, in a summary, the complexity of a system at national scale. COVID-5 says that there are 37 processes. At the level of the board or the steering committee, they ensure governance, framework, and maintenance, which is telling everyone, hey guys, we're going to IT governance. So that's basically what Secretary Ona did and Secretary Montejo did on January 29, 2014. And the next role is to ensure benefits delivery, optimization, resource optimization, and stakeholder and ensure stakeholder transparency. So they've done all of this already. They benefits, which are decreased maternal death, increased field health coverage, the health facility enhancement program, and the IT in public health facilities. They will ask those to the technical working group, and the technical working group will align, plan, and organize, build, acquire, and implement, deliver service and support, monitor, evaluate, and assess, and feedback the monitoring governance body so that they know what's happening, the directions that they set out in the beginning. You can see in each major box, there are other sub-boxes that are actually detailed in themselves. And this is quite overwhelming to many people who are seeing this for the first time, but also very valuable in the sense that you now have a guide on what are the important components that you need to think of when you want to run a national level information system. So at the first time the technical working group looked at this, he sort of like got depressed because he saw the enormity of what things need to and what we don't have. But in a way, it also helped us start planning and practically investing on, okay, we need enterprise architecture, so let's invest on enterprise architecture.
I have
yes,
a question. I'm depressed. My impression is this COVID-5, for example, you're giving that it's supposed to be general for every e-health problem that you might anticipate or something.
Yeah, it's for any IT system, and basically we're adopting it to the national e-health program. Maybe I'll share with you the story. Secretary Ona used to be the head of the National Kidney and Transplant Institute.
Okay.
And in the KTI, which is one hospital in that corner of East Avenue, there were problems with computerizing the hospital. It was a very difficult computerization project, and it's a common problem. I think even in developed countries, this can still be a very challenging problem, much more in developed countries such as the Philippines. So when he became the Secretary of Health, he became accountable now for 1,600 hospitals. So that was what running in his mind. if I'm encountering challenges computerizing one hospital where I will be the director, how I make it possible for 1,600 other hospitals, half of them private, half of them public sector, also automate and use information systems to improve hospital operations.
Okay.
Complexity he was facing. He, this was shown to him. He said, I'd rather have a framework to guide me on moving forward with all our projects rather than having a framework and, sticking finger up the air and not really knowing whether we're moving forward, backward, or left or right. The framework actually is just a guide. It just you. These are the important components. This was created by a global set of industry experts on information systems. These means Information Systems Audit Control Association. And this framework is the distillation of experiences of a global network of IT professionals. And work from our perspective, at least provide discipline as to look for and to troubleshoot a system that is probably not working. So framework is really just a guide. It tells you, for example, when we started the National eHealth program, we no strong handles on enterprise architecture. What? When we clicked on this box, it told us, this is like the blueprint of National eHealth system. When you want to build the house, you straight to the hardware and start buying hollow blocks and sacks of cement. I mean, you have to have a plan first. You have to have a blueprint. And the blueprint is what you give to the carpenter, to the electricians, to the plumbers, and they don't know each other, work at different shifts, and you can actually have your house later on because they're all working from the same blueprint.
Okay.
The National eHealth system, you'll have developers, you'll have doctors, you'll have data centers, you'll have telecommunications companies, versus all different agendas, different perspectives. But you give them a blueprint, enterprise architecture, they understand what they're supposed to do within that big blueprint. Just one box in COVID-5 that we've missed out at the beginning. So the COVID-5 really helps in telling the people who are implementing, hey guys, this is best practice. Why don't you start looking at these boxes? Gauge yourself, are you up to speed with particular box? And if you're not, you're measuring yourselves whether you're progressing with your risk management, with your security, with your suppliers, etc., etc. It is very lenient. I mean, that is basically saying, we're not telling you should do this or do that. We're just telling you these are the things to look for. It's up to you how much you punish yourselves in terms of getting yourself from level 0 to level 5, for example, on managed risk. So, guys,
Okay.
on May 27 at the third eHealth Steering Committee meeting, the technical group basically came back to the steering committee and said, given actions of decreasing maternal death, increasing PhilHealth coverage, completing the management program, and using ICT, we're proposing the Health Information Exchange as the project that all agencies in the steering committee can work on. Information exchange basically allows the participating agencies, DOH, PhilHealth, the UP Manila, and CHED to share data with each other. Sections of the steering committee was go ahead with the Philippine Health Information Exchange and crafting the data sharing agreement between agencies. An emergency meeting was set on July 23, 2014 because realization that there was already a Data Privacy Act of 2012 that the Data Sharing Act would be going action course with the Data Privacy Act and put the Secretary of Health at risk with sharing agreement. So this meeting, the steering committee also told the technical working group, okay, as you are working on the data sharing agreement, please be conscious of the Data Privacy Act as well, and make sure that we are not violating the act as we share data with each other. So it became sort of like a joint effort to make sure that the sharing happens, but at the same time, for the privacy of the Filipino citizens. So Philippine Health Information Exchange is over here on the right, and it's patterned with the Open HIE architecture. HIE is Health Information Exchange. This is happening right now in the US in different degrees of sophistication. I think the oldest HIE right now in the US is in Indianapolis with the Solar Reagan Street Institute and the University of Indiana. So the HIE architecture has the different registries and ability layer at the middle. AS, which is a terminology service, think of that as like a binary. There's the registry, the master person database. So you will have a person will have a unique number. The facility registry. Here we have the list of facilities. One facility will have one unique number. And then health worker registry. One provider will have a unique number. Then shared health record management information system. At the bottom, the point of service applications. So this would be your electronic medical records, your hospital information systems, your blood bank information systems, pharmacy information systems. The context behind an open HIE architecture is that you have this architecture, interoperability is possible because you will be referring to the client consistently using his unique number. You will be facility serving that client with that number. You will be referring to the health worker using their unique number and using terms for terminology service. And by doing so, you are using standards and systems at the bottom. Using the standards will understand the other. That's what we also have at the Philippine Health Information Exchange. You get the mapping. So after the directives given by the steering committee, finally, January 29, 2016, the joint administrative order from DOH, DOST, and PhilHealth for the implementation of the PHIE was published in the major dailies. The first step to implementation of the PHIE. The same day, on our major daily, they published the privacy guidelines for the implementation of the PHIE. I'm sorry. Then there's also right now the standards catalog, with very detailed definitions of data standards that will be used in the Philippines. And change management manual if you want to update a standard in the catalog or you want to introduce a standard in the catalog. All these are available. Balts, you were asking earlier, where can we find all of these resources? You find them at ehealth.doh.gov.ph.
In your estimation, what's the percentage of, let's say, hospitals or clinics that are running COVID-5 or similar to it?
I don't know about COVID-5, but systems, there are 1,015 RHUs running a certain type of an electronic medical record out of a total of 3,000 RHUs. One third. There are, when I was CEO of PhilHealth, we knew that there were 100 hospitals out of the 1,600 that the system in place. That was in 2012. I think there are more now. Yeah. Not many. That I can't know the numbers about COVID-5. I know PGH is about to embark on COVID-5. implementation. But I don't know about the other hospitals. IT systems are already there, and all these IT headaches that I've already shared are, I mean, already making people lose their hair in many of these hospitals.
Actually, now I remember, Eloy, the reason why I thought of you was I was trying to Google search information about incidence of cancer sa Pilipinas.
Yes.
I think the most recent one I could get was, what, 2013, and it was from WHO. Kaya sabi ko, walang hospitals sa Pilipinas or any health institution keeping records.
For cancer, that should be the Philippine Cancer Society. They have sentinel sites.
I get into their website, but I think latest one was 2013.
Like what I realized, one effort is actually just Twitterizing the registries. The effort is encouraging them to share the data to the outside world. So in the Philippine General Hospital, they've computerized the pathology database already.
But be expensive, right?
Not early. These are just, I mean, if it's, for example, in PGH, they're just using a simple network. So they're already encoding all the histopathological reports. So it's ready. But another effort to opening that up, in a way where you're not violating the Data Privacy Act, but still encouraging research and knowledge build up in cancer cases, at least in the Philippine General Hospital.
Yeah. I just have one scientist, si Jong De Castro,
Yes.
creating apps on a smartphone.
Yes. I mean, those apps are really commendable. They're really needed. But until the culture of data sharing is already there, people, I mean, in the US, in Europe, they have the same problem.
Yeah.
These systems are easy to build. I mean, everyone now can build a system. The problem is that system going to be interoperating with another system and feeding back data to the shared health record, so that now have a national management information system. So we already have 6 electronic medical records. They're running in 1,015 rural units, but data is all inside the facilities, and no way to get together except until you build the Philippine Health Information Exchange.
Yeah.
In which case, so now finally we have the standards.
What if you use something like ginagawa ng Amazon or UPS when they deliver your merchandise? Yung bang idiot proof, yung mga gamit ng handheld
One,
like Amazon, for example, they handle, I don't know, billions of parcels, millions and millions of parcels a day, but they have this very nice way of keeping down your goods.
you know what works, Baltz?
Yeah.
You follow Amazon standards. Amazon standards, and you come in with your own app. Amazon will just reject you. Amazon is running a health information exchange.
Yes.
And it's standards through that exchange. You follow the exchange standards of Amazon, you're in the game. If it's information exchange standards of Amazon, you're out. So it's what we're trying to build here. It's a exchange owned the Department of Health, Department of Science and Technology, hopefully with their mandate behind it. Yeah. But even private sector insurance companies, private hospitals will realize it is better to just plug into this exchange and benefit from the ecosystem rather than build our own separate information exchanges and not be able to interoperate with it. So it's like then just have many Amazons that are not talking to each other. It's just having one Amazon. Yeah. Then, Amazon does not interoperate with the Google system and does operate with the Apple system.
They want to kill each other.
I mean, I think it's just natural selection that you try to market.
Yeah.
I think it's that the Philippine Health Information Exchange is being initiated by government But at the same time, government should realize this is not going to play those until you bring in the private sector.
There are private companies that are eyeing at this one.
Yes, yeah, the idea here is for government to come up with the blueprint and then have that run by the private sector. But that's my opinion. We still need to see whether that will be a steering committee decision. But if I'd say let's have government come up with a blueprint and the private sector run it for good. Because the private sector will have better resources in running something like this because this is their bread and butter.
Yeah.
But that's why I'd like to label that as my opinion. Okay, these things can be accessed to ehealth.doh.gov.ph. So my final slides, what's in it for genomics, clinical informatics, public health informatics. So we use this framework at the National Telehealth Center. Everything that we're doing at the genomics and public health informatics, we're actually in one spectrum. We are working actually together. Point at least is the individual, more and cells, form tissues, form organisms, organisms form populations. So if we keep working and making sure that as we work in our vertical environments, we ensure that we have that horizontal integration between ourselves, and that would be the Philippine Information Exchange. Right. So even as you work with Jesus, please the dictionary. If it's a gene sequence that relates to a person, related to his client registry ID. If it's, you don't need to link it to his client registry. If you need to link it to a geographic location, link it to the facility registry where that gene sequence was extracted. If you don't know who extracted the gene sequence, please record it against the health worker registry ID of the one who did the sequencing. And if so, you can continue collecting that in the genomic data repository separately. That's fine. But you can into larger Philippine Health Information Exchange and contribute to national health management information system.
Actually, I was asking Chancellor Menchit. I think she's listening.
Yeah.
I was asking you about, let's say, your nationwide newborn screening. Let's say, merely speculation, okay. Let's say you have the Philippine Islands with, I don't know, 50 ethnic groups. And you have these dots that would show incidence of metabolic condition, for example, from your newborn screening. And then you see some clustering of red dots for a given metabolic condition on one geographical location. And then you ask questions, what's happening? Maybe it could be that, or it could be, let's say, the genomic background of an ethnic group.
Actually, we for that program, the newborn screening program, we have our own database. It's not interacting with the Department of Health, but we have the data for 20 years. And it's nice, at one point, having this infrastructure will be good, but that information we have, we collect data, and we're now analyzing actually the screening. So we have information for some, and some we're not yet ready to give the information. So maybe when you hear, we can talk about that data set. And but basically, our system for the data for newborn screening is closed at the moment, which means we provide information to hospitals if they need it. We provide information to the Department of Health. So we're get linked to the system of the Department of Health, but we manage our own data system because we handle lots of data. So we're screening now 1 million babies a year. That means we've got data sets of at least 5 million. Because we're screening for 6 million, and we're moving on to screening for 28. I guess having this part that Ellie was talking about is good on a national scale, and I just wanted to mention to you that is a move for government, yes, let's say in PGH for the compensation, right, Eloy? Remember? Yes.
Yes.
Has it been approved? There is an application for 600 million to either just get the hospital PGH actually computer. So hopefully when that happens, because PGH is really the biggest, probably the biggest data set, they can help us make some decisions in the future because it will fit into the infrastructure of DOH. Is that the correct assumption, Eloy?
Yes, ma'am. That proposal is moving forward. Earliest, however, it will start would be 2017, but it's moving forward.
Yeah. Okay, so this, I think the concept of having that infrastructure, I want to say that I see that government will have to put that blueprint and a private sector can come in and help out. But government is not going to give the blueprint and we have 100 private blueprints, then it still doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Actually, what we did for the new training, we provided the infrastructure for the whole country. Because right now, we are actually implementing in 7,000 hospitals. But we provided the infrastructure for 7,000 hospitals. So I perfectly agree with the comment of Eloy that government put in that infrastructure and then we can buy in from the private sector along the way. Answer that you were mentioning, what Eloy said is correct. That to the Philippine Cancer Registry. Again, if we would just talk to each other, right, Eloy?
Yes, ma'am.
If we provide this information to the Department of Health, then we can actually get the data. But that is to provide an infrastructure so that we can talk to each other. Yes, in the future, when it comes to genomics, just when we provide data, when we get our sequences and put it in the gene bank, we're saying that we're talking about the same method. Here are the sequences, and then so that we can talk to each other at the end and eventually come up with data that's useful not only for the Philippines but for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Again, somebody has to provide that infrastructure.
Yeah.
I hope that the Genome Center eventually will be able to do that when it comes to the genomics bulk. This is something we can work on.
At the early stage of the game, Eloy, I think you should involve people who are creating software to analyze these data sets, like give them what are the data sets. Like, for example, sequencing genomes after genomes and genomes, and then they're useless unless you have people who can analyze them, right?
Yes. Like bulks.
Wait until 1 billion genomes are sequenced and then you open them up to software developers. I think you should involve them right away because there's usually a positive feedback loop. For example, people like me who's more towards theory, systems analysis, I tell you, that kind of, why are you generating the data? I won't tell anything. And then we argue, and then there's this synergy, and then developing software could tell you what data sets to look for or accumulate as well. So at this early stage of the game, you should involve them.
One of the questions maybe for the PGC would be, will you be adopting the NCBI gene ontology? Will be, then that's what we put the terminology service. The gene ontology or any other terminology set that can use as a standard way of defining genomics data structures.
The ontology consortium has won over other ontology competitors, diba? Ontology.
I'm not a practitioner, that's why that's the only I know right now. NCBI has NCBI adopted it already? Because I think that would be what you will put in the terminology service.
Yeah.
When a consultation process starts in the terminology service, the way it works is that we will be connecting with subject matter experts. So for cardiology, we will go to the Philippine Heart Association. For surgical, we will go to the Philippine College of Surgeons. When it comes to genomics, we'll probably go to the Philippine Genomics Center and ask them, do you have an ontology or a set of terminologies that you want to be put on field information exchange? So I guess that might be something we can prepare for.
Chancellor Menchit, probably, I think she knows about HUGO, right? Human Genome Ontology. And
Well, we have to speak in language as
Yes.
what's happening in the rest of the world, because
Yes.
if we don't, then we can't use the data.
Right.
So usually when we have some sequence and we deposit it in bank or any other database, it uses the language that's used by the rest of the world.
yeah,
What we need to do is, I think, about we can, the amount of data we have, I think we can start collecting the data from different groups in the country. Maybe that's something that we can initiate. But what's happening right now is that when there is a group, something, they really participate in the international platforms so that the sequences of the Filipino population can actually be put into whatever work that they're working on.
yeah.
So we'll get into that. We'll get into
Yeah.
that.
I think we should
yeah.
establish that. Like I work at NIH and I look at NCBI, National Center for Biotechnology Information. I mean, control all these ontologies, PubMed literature database, gene ontology, etc. At least the Philippine Genome Center should take a leading role when it comes to organizing those local data sets somehow.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe that's something we can look into, because it's starting to build up, and it's something that maybe that's one project we can work on about. So
Yeah.
let's put that on the table. I know Joe is in the call, and I saw him put some questions. Joe, do you want some questions, or you want to contribute to the
Charisse,
discussion?
can you upgrade the Miss? Is that Jo? Yes, ma'am. Or yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Go ahead. If you have a. Go ahead.
Can you hear us?
Very well. Go ahead.
The two gene ontologies are actually the facility, the data that we get. We try to align.
Louder, please, Joe. Please come closer to the mic.
We try to say, for example, we have an annotated genome, and we try to annotate that. We align that with what's available with the gene ontology and other databases online. So yeah, we're quite sort of followers already of the scientific community, right?
Okay. Very good. Thank you. So what my prediction is that the Department of Health cannot all of the data of itself. So it will be identifying key partners to serve specific sets of data. So maybe for genomic data, that will be the Philippine Genomic Center. For newborn screening data, that will be the Newborn Screening Center. And then for clinical data, it might be the Philippine General Hospital. But definitely, I don't think all of this data should be in one place. It's also a security risk in itself. So by keeping under the care of stewards or curators, assurance that there's high quality maintenance in the curation, but there should be guidance on how they should store this according to the standards of the Philippine Health Information Exchange, so that in case there's a need to consolidate data for specific purposes, then data formats are already agreed upon with the curators, and there's there's a possibility for interoperating, exchanging data between curators. Over. But so when I finish my slides, slide.
Yeah.
Slide. So it is complex. Health and ICT combined is complex. So no single sector can do it alone. It needs stakeholders to collaborate under the leadership of the Department of Health. And we're happy that the DOH is actually showing the way now. Governance frameworks like COVID-5 help enterprises navigate their IT. With a framework, it is easy to get lost. Complexity. With governance, stakeholders can refer to the guide as they press. So it's like a map. Good governance is key to progress. Good governance can be as simple as keeping meetings on schedule, deciding together as a group. We can estimate those two things when it comes to progressing with our e-health program. And I'd recommend the e-health technical working group for keeping up to their schedules and their consensus building, which is also something that takes a lot of time, but also more sustainable in the long run because anything decided on consensus becomes owned by all the people who made the decision. Much, and I'd like to just inform you of our upcoming UP Med webinars. But back to you, Baltz.
Thank you so much, Eloy. I learned a lot. Walang kalam-alam sa field na to, but big data is a buzzword here in the US.
Yes.
And I visited last November, and frustrating Google search for data on cancer that led to believe that I think the Philippines still has a lot to work on when it comes to integrating all these e-health systems. Thank you so much. I really did. Are there other questions from the audience? We still have time, right?
Charisse, in question?
Questions from Dr. Surayo and Dr. Jomar.
Yes. Hi.
Dr. Surayo is asked, did the Philippines start national e-health strategy from the scratch or refer to any existing framework and modify it?
In 2010, the Department of Health already published their national e-health strategy, but it followed the WHO-ITU framework. So WHO-ITU framework came out in 2012. We were not building from scratch. We were able to plug in concepts from the 2010 strategy into the 2012 strategy. So already had, and there was already some semblance of a strategy as far back as 2008. I hope that answers the question. Then, chat.
He has another question. Who are to learn and understand COVID-5 in the organization who govern national e-health?
If you ask me, I put it in diversity. I would put it under the Vice Chancellor for Planning, because that gives the Vice Chancellor a big picture of the things that need to be built in components of an enterprise-wide information technology. In a corporation, for example, in PhilHealth, I would put it under corporate planning and organizational development. It varies amongst different companies where they want to put it, but usually with the group assigned for strategic planning and development. Over.
Dr. Alvin, we have a question from Dr. Jomar. Jomar, would you like to speak on your phone?
So, hello. I'm Omar from UPLB, and I have a question. Structure or in your future structure, where do you plan to put the conditional modelers or because more on the analyst part of the data?
Yes.
From Japan. He's talking from Japan.
Yes. Let me see. Thank you for that question, Jomar. You would come in here, capacity building, IT working group. But
Are there existing group already, or you're still establishing the groups?
there's an existing group already composed of DOH, DOST, UP Manila people. That structure that I showed. But this is focused on the exchange itself. So this is like the freeway. What you mentioned regarding computational would be an STEM, as we call it, advanced system standards. Will do a lot of number crunching and data crunching, right?
Yeah.
Crunching doesn't actually happen in the exchange. The exchange does only what it does is just check the syntax and the semantics if it's correct. You bring it back to your database, and then you do your number crunching there. So your solution would be a point of service application, and need to do now is understand the standards of the A, implement your local database, and run it in your environment. Confident later on, if another group is doing computational work, they're also using the same strategy, they're using the same standards. You guys can actually combine your data set and do more crunching with combined data set. Or you can also combine your genomic data set with clinical data sets from PGH, or in public data sets from the Public Health Informatics Group, their geographic information systems. By keep with these standards, we are able to work together later on. Even we only work separately now.
Say,
Mhm.
to, let's say, do some research regarding your database, to use your database, where do we go? I mean, we ask for me something like that.
You'll be in the shared health record. Shared health record, this will be under the governance of the National E-Health Steering Committee. And the agreement was only DOH and PhilHealth are exchanging data about PhilHealth members. Demographic, name, age, sex, yes, and a lot of 9 months just to get those data elements being exchanged. So I think there's a lot to be said about technical interoperability, which is probably easier. Business interoperability, which is I own this data. Why am I going to share that with you?
Mm.
If even if we have exact same data structures, I see the business opportunity for sharing this data with you. As a matter of fact, I see a lot of risk based on the Data Privacy Act. So those are the challenges we had. We already had this framework for interoperability, but not surpass the barriers for business interoperability. The Data Privacy Act is a very serious one because it actually imposes penalties for unauthorized sharing of data between facilities. So yes, ma'am.
Kumar, are you thinking of a very specific condition that you'd like to work on?
This one of my studies about I'm doing more on evolutionary biology, host parasite coevolution.
Okay.
If I want to use data in the Philippines regarding evolution of antibiotic resistance, how can I
Okay.
database something like that?
Would your study require geographic information? Like what is the antimicrobial resistance in Visayas, Luzon, and Mindanao, and comparing them to each other? Will you have local dimensions in your studies?
It's just more on temporal now.
So temporal, then you don't need the exchange. You just need to have a timestamp in your data set. But if you want to compare antimicrobial resistance across facilities, then you should use the facility ID, facility registry, where microbial test was done. So that one you can actually say this is microbial spread, resistance spread in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A quick one. Like Jomar had not master's degree. I think his major in undergrad math was optimization, right?
Yes. Options research, optimization, yes.
Control theory and optimization. Let's say we could define a problem. Let's this health governance. This process of, let's say, trying to reduce the problem of maternal death, let's say. And then you want to optimize the process such that, okay, you also don't want the system to be so expensive, right?
Correct.
You have to sort of balance the two. You could very much increase or decrease maternal deaths, but the cost would be prohibitive. So you could probably phrase the problem as an optimization problem.
Put interventions so that it beyond the maternal death, but at cost that the system can afford.
Question, Jomar, because right now what's happening in the Philippines is you work with the group with the data. So for instance, when you mentioned antimicrobial resistance, the big group at RITM looking actually at antimicrobial resistance, and I know that they just got an approval for a grant from Newton from UK. So right now what's happening in the Philippines is that if somebody wanted to work on any modeling, let's say for an infant, then you will work with a specialist on that one. For instance, I know that Raul just completed a project on modeling for dengue, and he had to get data from PAG-A and so on for the rainfall, the temperature, and so on. So maybe for your project, I could actually link you up with somebody from RITM if you really are into the antimicrobial resistance, then they might be able to give you the data set. So right now in the Philippines, if it's anything on newborn screening, they actually ask us,
Right.
and we provide the information that needed them. So I've had requests from outside the Philippines and within the Philippines. So maybe if you can send us an email and then on your interest, and then I can pass on your question, and then maybe they can provide you with some information.
I should tell you that Jomar just finished his PhD in Japan, and he's looking for a startup grant. Gentleman cheat. So
Well, if you come back, there's ballistic with a grant.
The problem is, I think I cannot apply for Balik PhD because I'm employed by UPLB. I just had my study leave. I really new coming back.
When you come back, opportunities at the DOST.
Up in
And
UPLB, we biomathematics group, and we already have, I think, 3 or 4 PhDs working with biomath. So we are really
no,
looking.
but work on the grant. On that, you can apply actually to DOST.
Mhm.
Right.
We can discuss it off the
Yes.
after this, but we can definitely can apply for a grant.
Okay.
So bring back to your return.
excellent. Questions?
I want to thank Bob for organizing this webinar, and to Eloy and his team for handling the management. And I've seen we've got an audience actually out there from different parts of the world.
Yes.
So I want to thank everybody, and thank you, Bob, for continuing this series, because it brings everybody around the world in one platform.
Extremely happy. Thank you so much, Eloy.
Welcome. Let's have an evaluation after this to compare GoToMeeting with WebEx Bounce.
I like both of them. GoToMeeting
Yeah.
simpler.
GoToMeeting is simpler. I had a hard time logging on. I thought it was my
Yes.
internet connection here in South Africa, but I think it's just the
Yeah, it's a new system, yes. Thank you, ma'am.
But Eloy.
Thanks so much again, Eloy.
Welcome. All right, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Everyone, thanks, Chancellor Manchit. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.